Lewis Hamilton uncovers the truth behind Ferrari's brake failure. Hamilton has seen this story before. The car slows down, the headlines explode, and the truth gets buried under excuses. But this time, he refused to play along. After Singapore, Hamilton didn't blame the heat, the track, or the setup. He blamed the system, calmly, surgically, and in public. "The media headlines tell one story," he said, "but I'm focused on the other one. That other story is the one Ferrari doesn't want you to hear. The story of a team that can't stop braking, not just in its brakes, but in its mindset. A team obsessed with control, yet losing control every weekend." Hamilton didn't just explain a mechanical failure, he exposed the culture behind it, a culture that can't handle pressure, can't take the truth, and can't stop repeating its own mistakes. And the most shocking part? He did it with a smile. Under the neon lights of Singapore, Ferrari's weekend unraveled one corner at a time. What began with quiet confidence ended in mechanical chaos and public embarrassment. Both drivers, Hamilton and Leclerc, reported the same haunting issue: the brakes fading, the car refusing to stop, the rhythm breaking down. Hamilton had started strong, gambling on a two-stop strategy that could have brought him back into the fight. Leclerc even moved aside, obeying the pit wall, giving Lewis a shot at Antonelli for P5. But then, the symptoms returned: soft pedals, unstable pressure, and a desperate attempt to hold off Alonso in the final laps. Hamilton fought the car, fought the brakes, fought physics itself. He crossed the line 7th, and then came the penalty. 5 seconds added for exceeding track limits while wrestling a car that wouldn't slow down. Demoted to 8th, the headlines wrote it as failure. Hamilton saw it differently. The brakes didn't just fail him, they revealed him. To outsiders, it looked like bad luck. To Hamilton, it looked familiar. The same script Ferrari keeps rewriting: strong pace on Friday, confusion on Saturday, collapse on Sunday. Singapore was no exception. Another weekend where potential melted under pressure. Ferrari called it a tough race. Hamilton called it a perfect example. That phrase wasn't praise, it was a diagnosis. Because once again, Ferrari executed everything by the book and still lost the plot. The strategy worked, the car had balance, but when the brakes gave out, the system froze. Engineers hesitated, communication stuttered, and the old ghost returned, a team paralyzed by its own process. Leclerc and Hamilton both fought the same mechanical demon, but the difference lay in their reaction. Leclerc panicked, Hamilton adapted. He drove around the problem, managed the chaos, and still saw what the cameras didn't: Ferrari braking not under speed, but under order. In Formula 1, some teams fail from risk. Ferrari fails from routine. When the brakes began to fade, so did Ferrari's composure. Leclerc's radio cracked first, clipped words, rising tension, the sound of a driver losing faith in his car and in his team. "Brake issue again," he muttered, the tone not of surprise but of resignation. He'd been here before. Hamilton felt the same failure, but his reaction was different. No panic, no noise, just calculation. He adjusted brake bias, changed entry angles, used gears to bleed speed, fighting physics with intelligence. He didn't need to shout, he needed to survive. Both Ferraris were wounded, but only one driver turned the pain into data. Hamilton crossed the line in silence, his car barely breathing, yet his message came after. This wasn't just bad luck, it was a symptom. The contrast couldn't be clearer. Leclerc broke with the car, Hamilton broke through it. And that right there is the difference between driving for Ferrari and leading Ferrari. Because in moments like this, the failure isn't hydraulic, it's human. When the microphones turned to him, Hamilton didn't defend himself. He didn't talk about penalties, brake fade, or bad luck. He talked about truth. "The media headlines tell one story," he said, "but I'm focused on the other one." It sounded simple, almost poetic, but it was a dagger wrapped in calm. Because that other story wasn't about results, it was about response. About how Ferrari reacts when the car fails, when pressure mounts, when leadership is tested. Hamilton wasn't asking for sympathy, he was exposing a culture. While the world focused on his penalty, he focused on how Ferrari handled adversity: slow, defensive, fragile. He saw engineers hiding behind data, leadership hiding behind platitudes, and a media machine desperate to protect the illusion of progress. His message was subtle but unmistakable. Ferrari doesn't lose because it's slow, it loses because it cannot face its own reflection. And in a single sentence, Hamilton turned a mechanical failure into a moral one. Hamilton's words didn't come from a press conference, they came from reflection and from a place of quiet control. On Instagram, he shared what the headlines ignored: gratitude, resilience, and a warning disguised as calm. He wrote about loss, about perspective, about how the real story isn't the one printed in headlines, but the one built in silence, how the team responds when things go wrong. Yesterday was the perfect example, he said. We got the strategy right, but the brake issue set us back. Now we go again. No anger, no blame, just leadership. The kind Ferrari hasn't had in years. Hamilton was doing what Ferrari's own management couldn't, setting direction, reshaping tone, reminding the factory what accountability sounds like. He praised the team, yes, but between every line was a mirror. Progress isn't enough, gratitude isn't victory, and culture, no matter how red the paint, must evolve or die. Hamilton's post wasn't comfort, it was command, the voice of a man already rewriting the team from within. The brake failure wasn't just mechanical, it was metaphorical, because Ferrari didn't just struggle to stop the car, it struggled to stop itself. Every corner of that race mirrored a deeper truth. The harder Ferrari pushes for control, the more it loses it. Brakes are supposed to bring stability, balance between speed and chaos, but in Singapore, they became a symbol of everything Ferrari has forgotten. The team builds beautiful machines, yet collapses when unpredictability enters the frame. The heat, the pressure, the timing, all expose a team that still reacts, never anticipates. Hamilton's insight cut deeper than engineering. The brake system failed because it was pushed beyond its limit, much like the team that built it. You can't chase perfection and ignore adaptation. You can't call yourself Ferrari and still panic under pressure. To the fans, the brake issue was a setback. To Hamilton, it was prophecy. Ferrari isn't fighting its rivals anymore, it's fighting inertia, and that's a race no team can win with cold hands and warm excuses. The paddock heard Hamilton's words, and the silence that followed. Rival engineers didn't mock the brake failure, they dissected it. They knew exactly what he meant. He's talking about systems, not stoppers, one insider whispered. Ferrari keeps fixing symptoms and ignoring causes. At Mercedes, old colleagues smiled knowingly. Hamilton's pattern was playing out again, diagnosed the weakness, exposed the culture, reshaped the narrative from inside. McLaren's staff privately called his post a masterclass in controlled rebellion. Even Red Bull's analysts admitted that once Hamilton starts speaking in parables, it's because he already understands the battlefield better than those running it. Ferrari thought the penalty story would fade after Monday's headlines, but it didn't, because Hamilton had already reframed the weekend. He turned a brake failure into an X-ray of Ferrari's structure. To the outside world, it looked like reflection. To those inside the sport, it sounded like a warning. And in the corridors of Maranello, everyone heard it, even if no one dared to answer. Singapore won't be remembered for a brake issue. It will be remembered as the weekend Hamilton exposed Ferrari's limits. Not mechanical, but mental. Because once you see the flaw, you can't unsee it. And now, every engineer, every strategist, every fan will be watching how Ferrari reacts when pressure builds again. 6 races remain, 6 tests of discipline, vision, and truth. Will Ferrari finally confront the weakness Hamilton revealed, or bury it under polite press releases and empty optimism? Will Vasseur take charge, or will Hamilton keep doing it for him from the cockpit? Hamilton called Singapore the perfect example. He wasn't wrong. It was the perfect example of why Ferrari still fights itself harder than it fights Red Bull or Mercedes. The next race won't just measure speed, it will measure courage. So, what do you think? Was this just bad luck, or the latest proof that Ferrari's culture is burning from within? Comment below, and if you believe Hamilton is leading this team through chaos toward change, write it clearly. #StandWithLewis. Subscribe, because the war inside Ferrari has only just begun.